Qui-Gon Jinn was at the Jedi Temple, observing the infinite horizon of Coruscant while young Anakin Skywalker underwent the Council's tests. The towers and aerial traffic platforms extended as far as the eye could see, a sea of metal and lights that never slept. The Jedi Master felt a growing uneasiness in his chest, a strange sensation he couldn't fully identify. His thoughts revolved around the boy he had found on Tatooine, that child with such an intense connection to the Force that defied any logical explanation. He knew the Council was skeptical, especially Master Windu, but Qui-Gon was absolutely certain that Anakin was special, perhaps even the chosen one mentioned in the ancient prophecies. The Force pulsed around the boy in a way he had never witnessed before in his entire long career as a Jedi. Suddenly, a shiver ran down his spine and Qui-Gon felt a disturbance in the Force, something totally unexpected and disconcerting. It was as if invisible waves were crossing through the very fabric of reality, making the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He clearly felt Anakin's presence, that unique and powerful signature in the Force, but coming from a completely wrong direction. Turning abruptly, he expected to see the boy standing behind him, perhaps having escaped from the masters conducting the tests. But there was no one there, only the empty corridor of the temple with its imposing columns and the soft glow of lights that never went out. Qui-Gon frowned, confused, his hand instinctively moving closer to the lightsaber attached to his belt. Something was happening, something that his experience and training couldn't adequately explain. "The boy is still being tested," a voice echoed softly beside him, laden with deep sadness and wisdom that seemed to transcend time. Qui-Gon turned his head quickly and his heart nearly stopped when he saw a translucent, bluish figure beginning to form before his eyes. The apparition glowed with an ethereal light, as if made of stars and mist at the same time, and gradually took on more defined contours. It was clearly a man, dressed in traditional Jedi robes, but there was something disturbing about his expression, a melancholy that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 lost battles. Qui-Gon took a step back, his breath catching in his throat for a moment, for in all his years studying the living Force and the mysteries of life after death, he had never actually witnessed anything like this. Theory was one thing, but seeing a materialized spirit before him was something completely different and surprising. Are you real?" Qui-Gon murmured, his voice coming out weaker than intended. As he took another cautious step toward the apparition, the Phantom nodded slowly, and Qui-Gon could see sadness and regret etched into every line of that translucent face. "I have studied the living Force for years, dedicated my life to understanding how consciousness can persist beyond physical death, but I never thought I would actually see this happen before me," continued the Jedi Master, his voice gaining strength as the initial shock began to give way to scientific curiosity. He took a few more steps, circling the figure like a scholar examining a rare archaeological discovery. "How is this possible? Physical manifestation through the living Force. All the texts I've read suggest it requires extensive training, a deep understanding of the Force's most hidden mysteries," questioned Qui-Gon, his eyes shining with a mixture of admiration and infinite questions. The spirit observed Qui-Gon with an expression that mixed affection and pain, like someone looking at a younger and more naive version of themselves. "Everything you have studied is correct, Qui-Gon Jinn," replied the apparition, his voice echoing in a strange way, as if coming from very far away and very close at the same time. "The living Force allows consciousness to persist, to transcend physical death and become one with the energy that permeates the entire galaxy. But there is much more that you have not yet discovered, secrets that take time and suffering to be revealed." The bluish figure moved slightly, and Qui-Gon noticed that it cast no shadow on the temple's polished floor. "I am here because of the boy, because of Anakin Skywalker," continued the spirit, and there was urgency in his words now, a pressing need to be heard and understood. "Because of Anakin?" Qui-Gon repeated, his mind working quickly to process the implications of that surprising revelation. "You know the boy? Do you know something about him that I should know?" The Jedi Master crossed his arms, his posture becoming more tense and defensive, as he felt he was about to hear something that would change everything. "He is not what you think," said the spirit, and Qui-Gon felt a chill run down his spine upon hearing those words pronounced with such certainty. Wait, are you saying he is not the chosen one? That all the evidence, all the signs I saw are wrong? Questioned Qui-Gon, feeling a pang of doubt for the first time since he had found the boy. The apparition shook its head slowly and responded, "No, he is indeed the chosen one, but his emotional system is beyond Obi-Wan's understanding. Far beyond." Qui-Gon frowned, confused by the specific mention of his Padawan. "Obi-Wan? But I am the one who will train him, not my apprentice," he protested, but something in the ghost's expression made his stomach tighten with apprehension. The spirit lowered its gaze, and a heavy silence laden with meaning filled the space between them, lasting several agonizing seconds. Qui-Gon felt his heart accelerate, for he recognized that type of silence. It was the silence of someone carrying a terrible secret and not knowing how to share it. "Is there something you know and don't want to tell me?" pressed the Jedi Master, taking a step forward with determination. "There are many things I know, Qui-Gon, things I cannot simply reveal without consequences," responded the apparition, finally raising its gaze again. "I know everything that is to come because I am not from this present time. One of the things you will learn studying the living force is that life not only continues after death, but also is not trapped in the timeline as you understand it." The spirit gestured vaguely, as if trying to explain concepts that defied common language. "We can transit through time with the right technique, see the past and future as an interconnected continuum." "Are you telling me you are from the future?" Qui-Gon questioned, his voice laden with incredulity mixed with growing understanding of the implications. The spirit nodded solemnly, and Qui-Gon felt as if the ground were moving beneath his feet. "Yes, from your future specifically, although from this side of the Force time works differently. It's difficult to explain with words that make sense to minds still bound to the physical plane," replied the apparition. "Then tell me what to do," exclaimed Qui-Gon, urgency taking hold of him like never before. For if someone from the future was there to warn him, surely something serious was at stake. "Wait a moment." The spirit raised a translucent hand, interrupting him. "I can guide you, I can show you paths, but you are the one who must make the final decisions. Do you understand this? For a new timeline to be created, for the future to be altered, the participants of that timeline are the ones who must create it through their own conscious choices. If I simply dictate every step, every action, this timeline will destabilize and the Force will fall into imbalance," continued the spirit, his voice taking on a more grave and serious tone. "With the birth of the Chosen One, this timeline is already very tenuous, very fragile. One wrong move and everything could collapse in ways that not even I can fully predict." Qui-Gon absorbed those words, understanding the wisdom behind them even though every fiber of his being just wanted to know exactly what to do. "I understand," he finally murmured. "But is there something you can tell me? Something that can guide me in the right direction?" The spirit nodded slowly, and his expression became even more melancholic. "The boy needs to work on detachment more than any other Padawan. His power is directly proportional to his attachment. The more he becomes attached, the more dangerous he becomes. And only you have the necessary keys to work on this issue with him, Qui-Gon. Only you." Qui-Gon took a deep breath, processing that crucial information and trying to understand all its ramifications. "Okay, but I will train him, won't I? After the Council approves, I will take him as my Padawan and we will work on these issues together," he affirmed, seeking confirmation. But the silence that followed was even heavier than the previous one, and Qui-Gon felt his blood freeze when he saw the expression of pain on the spirit's face. "No," said the apparition finally, and that single word fell like a death sentence. "You will die, Qui-Gon Jinn. Soon, very soon. And Anakin will be trained by Obi-Wan Kenobi." The Jedi Master felt as if he had been punched in the stomach, the air escaping from his lungs. "And if that happens, if things follow that course, everything will be lost. Everything." The spirit's words echoed in the empty corridor, laden with a weight that seemed to crush reality itself. "How will I know if what you say is true?" Qui-Gon asked, his voice coming out hoarse, for despite all the evidence before his eyes, a part of him still resisted accepting such a dark prophecy. "How can I be sure you are not some illusion?" Some Sith trick to divert me from the right path. The spirit smiled sadly, and there was so much suffering in that smile that Qui-Gon felt his heart squeeze. Because my name is Anakin Skywalker, revealed the apparition, and the world seemed to stop completely around Qui-Gon when the truth finally revealed itself in all its impossible magnitude. The spirit before him was not just someone from the future. It was the very boy who was now being tested, coming from a future where something had gone terribly wrong. The expression on his translucent face told stories of pain, loss, and regret that Qui-Gon could barely imagine. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the distant sound of Coruscant's aerial traffic outside. Qui-Gon looked at the spirit with new eyes, now seeing not just a mysterious apparition, but the tragic future of a child he had sworn to protect. "So you came to prevent me from dying? To save yourself?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Anakin, the Anakin from the future, shook his head slowly. "I came to save the galaxy, Qui-Gon. I came to prevent everything I loved from being destroyed, including myself. But to do this, you need to survive and make choices that no one else would make." His words hung in the air like a promise and a warning at the same time. "The path ahead will not be easy, and it will require you to challenge everything the Jedi Order represents. Are you prepared for that?" Qui-Gon looked into the spirit's eyes and, after a long moment of reflection, nodded with renewed determination. Qui-Gon followed every instruction he had received from that impossible encounter with Anakin's spirit, even if it meant making the most difficult decisions of his life. The Jedi Master took young Anakin and disappeared into the shadows of the galaxy, taking him away from Coruscant and from all the curious eyes of the Council, while Obi-Wan departed alone for Naboo accompanying Queen Amidala. He told no one about his plans, not his former Master Dooku, not even Obi-Wan, who departed confused and hurt by his master's sudden absence at such a crucial moment. Qui-Gon knew he was burning bridges, that his reputation in the Order was being tarnished, but the spirit's words constantly echoed in his mind. The first stop was Tatooine, where he used all his resources to buy Shmi Skywalker's freedom, taking her from Watto's clutches and from the slavery that had bound her for so long. Shmi cried with joy and disbelief when Qui-Gon appeared in her small dwelling with freedom documents and her son back. "I don't understand," she murmured, holding the papers with trembling hands while tears streamed down her face marked by the sun and hard work. "Why would you do this for us? We are just—" But Qui-Gon gently interrupted her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You and your son are more important to the galaxy's future than anything I have ever protected in my entire life as a Jedi," he said with absolute sincerity. He then explained, as much as he could without revealing everything, that he would train Anakin in a different way, away from the temple's traditional methods. Shmi, always wise and intuitive, seemed to understand that there was something greater at stake, something her son was destined to face. They left Tatooine behind, that desert and cruel planet that had been a prison to both of them for so long. Qui-Gon established a secret base on a small planet in the Outer Rim, a quiet and isolated place where he could train Anakin away from prying eyes and the suffocating influence of Coruscant. The training he provided the boy was different from everything the Jedi Order practiced. It focused deeply on the issue of detachment, but in a philosophical and practical way, not just through rigid rules and dogmas. Shmi actively participated in the process, her maternal presence being crucial to keeping Anakin emotionally balanced while Qui-Gon worked on the more difficult aspects of his character. "Anakin, detachment does not mean not loving," Qui-Gon explained during one of their many meditation sessions. "It means loving without possessiveness, without fear of loss. You can care deeply about someone and still be at peace if the Force decides to separate you." These were complex lessons for a child, but Anakin absorbed everything with an intensity that sometimes frightened even his master. Periodically, they visited Naboo, where Anakin maintained contact with Padme Amidala according to the mysterious instructions the spirit had given. The young queen, now growing into her political role, was always happy to see the boy who had helped save her planet, albeit indirectly through the actions of Obi-Wan and the Jedi. The friendship between Anakin and Padme flourished naturally over the years, gradually transforming into something deeper as both matured. Qui-Gon observed this with wise eyes, remembering the Spirit's words about how Anakin would not be an ordinary Jedi, how he would fall in love and have children. Instead of repressing these feelings as the Order would, Qui-Gon used them as teaching tools, helping Anakin understand how to channel his emotions without being consumed by them. "Love is not weakness, my young Padawan," he would say, "but possessive attachment, the fear of losing what we love, that can destroy us if we don't learn to deal with it properly." The years passed and Anakin grew to become something extraordinary, a formidable warrior whose skill with the lightsaber surpassed even the greatest masters of the Order, but also a wise and emotionally balanced man in a way that few Jedi could achieve. Qui-Gon had created a true war machine, but one that was guided by compassion and wisdom instead of anger and fear. When the Clone War finally broke out, dragging the galaxy into a massive conflict, Anakin was already an adult man, married to Padme in a secret ceremony on Naboo, witnessed only by Qui-Gon and Shmi. Soon after, Padme became pregnant, and when the twins Luke and Leia were born on that green and tranquil planet, far from the chaos of war, Qui-Gon knew it was time to return. "It is time to go to Coruscant," he told Anakin while holding the babies, feeling the powerful force flowing through those small lives. "It is time to show the Council what you have become." Their arrival at the Jedi Temple caused a tumult that reverberated through all the sacred corridors. Qui-Gon Jinn, considered possibly dead or a renegade after years of silence, appeared at the doors with a young man whose presence in the Force was so intense it made even Yoda pause in his steps. The Council was immediately summoned, and Qui-Gon finally told everything, about the spirit that had visited him, about the secret training, about how Anakin had been prepared in a completely different way. "Very strange, all this is," murmured Yoda, his ancient eyes studying Anakin carefully. "But deny the power in this young one, I cannot. Strong in the Force he is, stronger than any Jedi I have seen in centuries." Master Windu was more skeptical, concerned with the protocol breaches and violations of Jedi traditions. But when Anakin demonstrated not only his power, but also his wisdom and emotional control in various test situations, even Windu had to admit that Qui-Gon had created something remarkable. "We offer our services to the Republic in this war," Qui-Gon formally declared. "Anakin and I will fight alongside the Jedi. We will prove our worth in combat." After much deliberation, the Council accepted, recognizing they needed all possible help against the Separatist forces. It was during the first weeks after their return to Coruscant that Anakin had his first direct encounter with Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. The elderly politician had heard stories about the extraordinary young Jedi and insisted on meeting him personally, using all his influence to arrange a private meeting. When Anakin entered the Chancellor's luxurious office, he immediately felt something disturbing, a visceral sensation that made every instinct Qui-Gon had cultivated in him light up on maximum alert. Palpatine smiled warmly, extending his hand in greeting, but Anakin could sense something sinister beneath that friendly facade, like rot hidden under beautiful flowers. "Ah, young Skywalker," Palpatine said with that honeyed voice that had won over so many senators. "I have heard so many wonderful things about you. It is a pleasure to finally meet someone with so much potential." But as he spoke, Anakin expanded his perception in the Force, letting it flow through the Chancellor, and what he saw made him freeze completely. Images flashed through Anakin's mind, Palpatine enveloped in lightning bolts of dark side energy, orchestrating the war from both sides, manipulating the Republic and the Separatists like pieces in a cosmic chess game. He saw the true face beneath the benevolent politician's mask: Darth Sidious, Sith Lord, the architect of all the suffering consuming the galaxy. Qui-Gon's training took control, and Anakin maintained his neutral expression even as his heart raced. "The pleasure is mine, Chancellor," he said calmly, shaking the offered hand while his mind worked frantically. Palpatine didn't seem to notice he had been discovered, continuing with his compliments and subtle manipulation attempts. But Anakin had already decided what to do. This Sith needed to be stopped, here and now, before his plans reached complete fruition. When they finally said goodbye and Anakin left the office, he immediately contacted Qui-Gon through his communicator. "Master, we need to talk urgently," said Anakin, his voice tense but controlled. I discovered something about Chancellor Palpatine that changes everything. They met in a private area of the temple, where Anakin revealed everything he had seen through the Force. Qui-Gon listened with an increasingly dark expression, pieces of a puzzle finally falling into place. "We need to inform the Council immediately," said the Jedi Master. "But we also need to be prepared. A Sith Lord will not surrender easily, especially one who has come so close to achieving his goals." They took their discoveries to Yoda, Windu, and the other Masters, who initially reacted with deep skepticism. A Sith Lord as Supreme Chancellor? It seemed impossible, too absurd to be true. But Yoda, with his ancient wisdom, felt the truth in Anakin's words. "Blind we have been," murmured the Grand Master, his voice laden with sadness and contained anger. "Under our noses, the dark side grew, and nothing we saw." The Council decided to act quickly, before Palpatine could realize he had been discovered and implement some contingency plan. Anakin offered to confront the Chancellor directly, arguing that Palpatine still saw him as a possible tool to be manipulated, which would give him an advantage. Qui-Gon insisted on accompanying him, but Anakin gently refused. "I need to do this alone, Master," he said, and there was something in his eyes, a determination forged through years of unique training, that made Qui-Gon finally agree. When Anakin returned to Palpatine's office, this time with a squad of Jedi strategically positioned around the building, he wasted no time with formalities. "I know who you really are, Darth Sidious," he declared as soon as the door closed behind him. Palpatine's face transformed instantly, the friendly mask melting to reveal his fury. "You are smarter than I thought, young Skywalker," hissed the Sith, his eyes yellowing. "But smart is not enough to defeat a Sith Lord." Palpatine attacked with surprising speed for someone of his apparent age, his red lightsaber igniting and cutting through the air toward Anakin's throat. But the young Jedi was already in motion, his own blue saber meeting the blow with perfect precision, the force of the impact sending shockwaves through the luxurious office. They danced through the space, sabers crackling and hissing as they clashed repeatedly, Palpatine using all his Sith mastery, while Anakin applied every lesson Qui-Gon had taught him. The Chancellor was powerful, incredibly skilled, but Anakin had been trained specifically for this moment, his raw power channeled through perfect technique and emotional balance. With a fluid movement that seemed more like dance than combat, Anakin disarmed Palpatine, the red saber flying across the room and extinguishing. "Guards!" shouted Palpatine, his voice echoing through the communicator, and doors opened revealing members of the Praetorian Guard with their red armor and deadly vibro-blade weapons. Anakin didn't hesitate, moving like a hurricane through the guards trying to surround him. His saber was a blue line of pure light, deflecting blows, cutting weapons, incapacitating adversaries with brutal but non-lethal efficiency. In less than a minute, all the guards were down or disarmed, and Anakin turned back to Palpatine, who was now backing toward the panoramic window. "It's over, Sidious," said Anakin, approaching calmly, but the Sith Lord only smiled maliciously, raising his twisted hands. "No, young Jedi, it's only beginning." Blue lightning bolts of pure dark side energy exploded from his palms, rays that could torture and kill, converging on Anakin in a deluge of destructive power. Anakin had dropped his saber during the attack on the guards, and now stood unarmed before the electric fury of a Sith Lord. But instead of trying to dodge or block, he did something Palpatine didn't expect. He extended his own hands and grabbed the lightning with pure force. The energy crackled and hissed, but Anakin held it firmly, his training in emotional control and connection with the Force allowing him to do what few Jedi could. Slowly, inexorably, he began to push the lightning back, redirecting all that dark side energy back to its source. Palpatine's eyes widened in shock and terror when his own rays began to turn against him, the energy burning through his own flesh. "Impossible!" he screamed, but his voice was muffled by the thunderous sound of uncontrolled energy. With one last effort, Anakin released all the energy at once, and Palpatine was thrown against the wall, defeated, unconscious but alive. The Jedi who were waiting outside invaded the office moments later, finding Anakin standing in the center of the chaos, exhausted but triumphant, and the Supreme Chancellor finally revealed as the Sith Lord who had orchestrated everything from the beginning. The news of Darth Sidious's capture spread through the galaxy like wildfire, shocking citizens and politicians alike. With the true manipulator exposed and imprisoned, the Clone War began to disintegrate rapidly, the pieces of the Sith chessboard losing coordination and purpose. Anakin and Qui-Gon were hailed as heroes, but both refused the glory, preferring to focus on the reconstruction work the galaxy needed. The Jedi Council, impressed beyond words with what Anakin had achieved and recognizing the wisdom Qui-Gon had demonstrated in his unorthodox training method, offered both seats on the council. It was an unprecedented honor, especially for Anakin, who had technically never been officially knighted through traditional channels. Luke, Anakin's son, was accepted as a Padawan, beginning his own training under the guidance of various masters at the temple, although his father remained his greatest influence. And when the venerable Yoda finally became one with the Force after centuries of dedicated service, it was Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one who had been trained so differently, who was elected as the new Grand Master. The changes he then implemented in the Jedi Order, allowing healthy attachment, recognizing that emotions could be allies instead of enemies, reforming ancient dogmas that had become rigid and counterproductive. All of this were the seeds that Qui-Gon had planted years ago, now blossoming into a new era for the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy.